tutkia että niiden historiaa ihan
Kyllä.
enemmän kuin kukaan muu oikeastaan jaksanut käännellä venäjänkielisiä sivuja sun muuta.
Joo.
Tietää mitä siellä lukee niissä.
Sitten mä lisäsin tuohon alkuun vähän kuvia altpartilta.
Joo, se on hyvä.
Ajattelin, ettei mitään hirveät tekstisepostusta vaan.
Joo. No siis lähdetään siitä, että lähinnä tämän pointti on julkistaa altpartien tämän vuoden teema ja kertoa mikä altparty on ja sen strategia ja muuta semmoista bla bla bla.
Halo. Kuuluuko? Kuuluuko? Hyvä.
Bau.
Sanokaa vaan kun aloitetaan, niin sit lähdetään liikenteeseen.
Joo, ne näyttää peukkua.
Joo. All right. Hello everybody. My name is Jaffa and I come from Helsinki, Finland, and from Alternative Party, and I'm the co-founder of the Finnish website IRC Galleria also, and I have been doing Alternative Party for like 4 years. And I have been at the assembly since 1996.
I'm Visu, or Visa-Valtteri Pimiä, is my real name. And I just recently moved to Turku. I'm also Finnish, and by trade I'm a software developer, having organized assembly as well for 4 consecutive years. Not organizing this year though, but I have 2 seminars to make up for it. And I have been part of the compo crew at Alt Party for a number of years, and I'm also the curator of Demo Wall and free time digital artist as well.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk something about the East European demo scene and the platforms that were used there. But before that, a couple of words about the Alternative Party. Alternative Party is a demo party and digital culture festival, not exactly like assembly. The word alternative means that we are trying to make a difference and do all kinds of different things. And Alternative Party consists mainly about people being together, crossing the existing things that exist, partying, listening to music, watching demos on weird platforms, but most of all it's things that you do together. You can like say that Alternative Party combines all kinds of people like researchers, artists, visualists, musicians, and gets them to do things differently. The strategy how we see the world is that when you have these people who have like been in the computer clubs when they were young, like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs and Wozniak, they were in groups. And we are trying to get people into the digital culture through all kinds of cultural things that are happening like on the interface of the digital culture. For example, the Soviet computers are one thing that is interesting inside the digital culture, but also from the point of view of normal people. So we import people from the world into the digital culture, and the digital culture then changes and is having an evolution inside, and then people go outside from digital culture and they like start their own revolutions and contribute into the world. And you can see what kind of things people have done all around the world. But yeah, this year's Alternative Party has the theme of Soviet computers, and it's organized in the Cable Factory in Helsinki in October 21st to October 23rd. And please come. There are a couple of flyers in the front of the presentation, so you can get yourself one. All right, but let's go to our main point, which is Sovietsky computer systems. In Soviet Union, it all began with a huge computer called M1, which is like made out of tubes. And it took like something 90 kilowatts of electrical power, and it was one of the first computers that has stored programs inside the memory. Because if you remember, the computers of that time were like manufactured to do only one thing, so it was a new innovation to have like programs stored and have changeable programs. And in the beginning of 50s, that is the thing that started to come reality, and also in Soviet Union. And one nice Soviet innovation is Setun, which is a trinary computer, not a binary computer, but a trinary computer. You had treats there which were like -1, 0, and +1. Not the ordinary 0 and 1 which you have on the binary computers. And the computer was mostly used for scientific research, and something like 50 were produced for the universities in Leningrad and Moscow and so on. And the new version, Setun 17, was produced in 1970. And then one really cool innovation from Soviet Union is the Argon 16 computer, which was used 36 years in Soyuz, Progress, Mir, and Salyut spacecrafts and space stations. And it was like designed once, and then they just like produced it, and it never failed. And as you can see, it has like 3 chambers because it has 3 exactly same computers inside of it. So it was not like doubled but tripled, and it worked. If one computer fails, then the others will make the things happen. And then when we go into the home computers of the Soviet Union, you might know that there was a ban of exporting high technology into the Soviet Union from the Western world. So the Eastern world had to make something out of what they had. So the first Soviet home computer was Micro 80. It was like not sold, but there was a popular magazine called Radio, which had the schematics inside of it. But it had something like 200 parts, so which were really hard to find. So I think something like 2 or 3 were actually built, and you had to buy some of those parts from the black market. But it was like the beginning, and it had like only a text mode for television. And the processor was like Intel 8080 clone.
Yeah, was part of the very common Soviet trend of copying Western processors, basically just cloning them at chip level, because you could run imported software on it then when you had the same sort of compatible processor opcodes and that stuff running.
Yeah. And in Soviet Union there were those like 5-year programs, and in one program there was a home computer planned to be released, which was Electronica BK. And BK is like a home computer or a personal computer, like a PC. And it was produced in masses, but there were no software or no verbicals available for it. So the hackers had to make their own. But this was a start, and it also had like video mode. So, and as you might have know, in the Western world, you have might be used into the NTSC modes, which are like 640 to 480, but the Soviet computers used those resolutions which were like more or less 512 times 256.
And this is the most interesting sort of part of this evolution for us at Alt Party, because this was one of the first machines that actually have had demos made for it and had computer graphics and bitmap graphics on the screen. And there's a load of, well, not a load, a few demos for BK11, and it's definitely the one machine, the oldest one you can do graphics on, really.
Yeah. And as you can see from the keyboard, it's nothing like you have seen on the Western world. It has like all kinds of keys that have special functions. And this is like a screenshot of a bit newer software made for it.
Norton Commander clone.
Yeah. And then, as the Micro 80 computer had 200 parts and people were frustrated, the radio magazine made a new one called Radio 86 Arco in '96, which had only 29 components. But it had the same processor and only a text mode, but as it was really easy to build, people started to make their own hardware hacks, and they made also a graphic adapter for it. And here's a screenshot of a game called Gold for it. And in the Russian educational world, there was a computer called UKNC, which was a dual processor computer. The processor was PDP-11 based, as in the Electronica BK, and it had loads of memory and a bigger graphic resolution. And this was so expensive they only could have it on the computer science classes in the 80s in Soviet Union.
This is one of the interesting sort of choices they made in the Soviet Union, because the PDP-11 was basically a processor they used in mainframes and like large computers in the Western world, but the Russian computer designers decided to use it for home computers, and nothing like that really exists in the Western world. Nobody did a home computer design based on PDP-11.
Then when we go on, there was this Vector 06C, which was made for the home market in the next 5-year plan. And the nice thing about this is that it has a 256 color palette, which was more colors to choose from as those earlier computers which had a static palette. And the sound was done really strangely, because it's an Intel timer chip that they modified and used for producing sounds in that computer. And the video is made really strangely, because you have 4 bit planes where you set like 1 bit for every plane, and then it like makes a color out of it.
Similar to Amiga.
Not exactly.
But
Yeah.
plain placed anyway. Yeah.
And here's a nice screenshot of Volgograd 1990 game made for it. And when we go on, which came to be the most important platform of Soviet Union and the whole Eastern Europe, was the ZX Spectrum clones, because ZX Spectrum was the cheapest machine to buy and contraband into the Eastern world. They started to copy the chips inside of it, and there was no such thing as copyright in the Soviet Union or other Eastern world, so they made their own ones. And the most interesting thing about this is that they made them better than the original ZX Spectrum, and these are still produced in Russia. and there are lots of clones. I think there are something like 50 clones, different kinds of clones that you can find.
I have the latest one here, which is the ZX Evo, which we will run the demo show from, which is basically a PC-compatible motherboard that's produced in Russia and can be bought as a kit or ready-made, and it's still totally compatible with the old Spectrums from Britain.
Yeah. And these were also produced in DDR with a variant called Robotron, and in Yugoslavia with a variant called Galaxia. But the most important thing for the demo scene was the Pentagon computer, which was like the most widespread Spectrum clone in Soviet Union in the late 80s. And there were done a lot of software that needed the Pentagon to run into it. And there are still some hobbyists who are making those Pentagon computers themselves.
Like this one, because it's a Pentagon, basically.
Yeah. Here is a couple of motherboards of the Pentagon computer. And when we are talking about the Russian and Soviet demo scene, the first demos were made in Poland and Czechoslovakia. And the Eastern world didn't know that the Western demo scene existed. They just started to make their own hardware hacks, and then they started to make their own software hacks because there were no software available. Well, some games and something, but they hacked them all and spread them. And the Spectrum clones were like the main platform, and they heard about Amiga in the beginning of the 90s, but they didn't know exactly what it looked like. And there were lots of Spectrum demos saying that Amiga rules, but the makers didn't see the actual computer because they spread the demos through videotapes. And the first Russian demo party was in 1995 with 200 participants.
And there's still a very strong sort of tradition of demo scene activities in eastern countries, and there's still a sort of strong following from the mid-90s, and the Spectrum is still very dearly held at all of those parties, really. So you usually get 1 or 2 Spectrum entries at any given demo party in Eastern Europe. All right. So the next thing I'm going to sort of get you in the feeling of what these demos that come from the East are like, and here I have some slides of Spectrum graphics, so you can see it has those similar kind of qualities that you could see in Commodore 64 graphics, for example, but they have their pretty unique style in many things, as they really didn't as much copy the sort of effect ideas and the sort of traditions of Western demos in parties and what effects were cool at any given time. So it's a sort of interesting mixture of their own style and influences from Amiga demos and all that stuff. And I'm now going to show you a selection of some Spectrum demos which are made for Pentagon, and I'm going to run them on the ZX Evo.
Tuu vaan tuohon. Yhden ehtii jatkaa vielä. Yhden ehtii vielä. toi kyyhätä.
Voi vielä pari siihen.
Siihen All right, and more demos available at Alternative Party this October.
And demo wall.
Yeah.
Coming more information soon.
Yeah. So I include some links, and this presentation will be available on SlideShare after this. And well, thank you everybody, and hope you enjoyed and come to Alternative Party. And come to take a flyer before you leave. Thanks.
Thank you.